everybody, and welcome to Inspired Rebel, where we love to showcase entrepreneurs that are really going for it in a way that maybe is a little edgy or, against the norms. They're doing something that's just different, whether it's what they believe in or it's the way that they're doing business in their industry. It's something that, for the most part, might seem like it puts them on the outside. It takes courage to do, determination, and really following their own intuition and guidance. So today I am thrilled because we are talking about one of my favorite topics, sex. Yeah, that's right. So we're talking about, in particular, female sexuality and the power of transformative change that has. Now, this topic to me is very near and dear because in my early years, I was trained in sexuality studies. I have a master's in that when I was living in Belgium. So I love connecting with other people who are really doing this work in a big way because, my own career kind of veered off in different directions. But this is still something that I strongly believe in. So we have with us today Dagmar who is kind of a big deal in her own right. She is one of the top 1% of people who have a sexuality specialization training in the world. So I want her to go into that and really explain it a little bit. But her approach to sexuality is really healing, and it is holistic. Takes into consideration not just, the mind and what we think about, but also a lot of body work. So to really ground it and make people confident in not just their sexuality, but in who they show up as in the world because of kind of this nice grounding foundation. So without further ado, Miss Dagmar, I'm so excited to introduce you to the community. Hello and welcome.
Well, Rose, what a beautiful introduction, and what an honor to be here with you today and, share with your audience and share with your listeners. Your work and your mission and your message is so incredibly powerful, and I am so incredibly honored to really be here with you today.
Absolutely. The feeling is mutual. So why don't we dive in here a little bit? Because I like to always hear people's background stories. How did you get into this work? How did you find this pathway? What led you to this passion?
I love this question, and I definitely love to share my story. And I'm going to start boldly. It was my own pain. It was my own suffering. So I have been sexually abused as a young teenager from the age of 12 to 15. And like so many women or so many girls who are sexually abused and they don't have the space and container for healing, they don't have the safe space in family or in their community where they can really, digest this horrible pain. I actually became mother at a very, very young age. I literally became pregnant when I was 17. I gave birth to my son when I was 18. And first time ever in my life, I felt at home. I felt that there is a purpose to my life, and there was a sense of unexplainable love and deep belonging with my son and towards my son. And it literally take me from that state of pure darkness and depression and destroying my body every single day with food and alcohol to a place of, okay, right, I need to sort my shit together so I can, look after this baby and I can take care of my son. So my days have lit up. And having said that, as I was going through, nurturing and nourishing my son, the relationship with his dad, who is my ex-husband, was completely falling apart and was bringing up a lot of old pain and a lot of old wounding to surface. So much so that just a few days before my son was about to hit his 4th birthday, I could no longer live in this pain and in this terror with his father. So I got some courage to apply for divorce. And that was a moment which defined everything. Because the day I have applied for divorce, his father decided to punish me. And what he did is he kidnapped our son. He took him away from me by a force. And I was separated from my son by a force for 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Year and a half. I had no hope of being with him again. I was blackmailed and emotionally tortured that I will never see my son again. And I went in such a horrible spiral of depression that every single day I thought about committing suicide. Every single day I was falling into 10,000 pieces. And I don't know which force every single day put me back. So I just get through my day and, survive this horrible, horrible pain of separation and this deep mother wound that brought up everything from past and all the abuse that I've experienced. So I don't know how, but probably through a very powerful law of reinforcement and some, a proper international law structure. 18 months into this pain, 18 months into the suffering, I was reunited with my son. And I'm not gonna lie, Rose, it was one of those days in my life where every single cell of my being was alive. There was this sense of emotional overwhelm and unexplainable joy, and mixed with pain and suffering and depression. And this day, when I was reunited with my son, I made a commitment to myself to heal this pain of separation, to heal this pain of sexual abuse, to heal this pain of what everyone else has done to me and to my body and to my emotions and to my sexuality, and do whatever it takes so I can be the most loving, most caring, most supportive mother for my son.
Wow. Wow. So like our listeners, I haven't heard that story before. That is every parent's worst nightmare, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's like everyone who has children contemplating divorce. I don't think it matters what country you're in, what lifestyle you're in. That's the fear, is that that's going to separate you from your child or your children. So to go through that, I commend you, because I can't. It's one of the hardest things I could imagine we would go through in this life. Mm-hmm. So your commitment in that moment to be the best version of yourself, to show up in that way for your child, what did that look like practically? So you embodied this, right? It's, for me, I get the visual. It's like energy being outside of you and all of a sudden like coming home, like coming back, in that centeredness, in that self. So how did you take that feeling and do something with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first sort of awakening and at first portal to, grounding that decision in my body was yoga. Like without question, I started to have daily yoga practice. I was very committed yogi, very committed to my development through the practice. And it got me far. It got me to a place where I felt safe and grounded in my body. And I began to develop, so much more like loving and accepting thoughts around my reality and my life's experience. So much so that I actually began teaching yoga and I became really good at it. And very soon into the experience of teaching yoga, I was kind of creating an environment for women, especially for women, that they felt safe enough to start opening up to me a lot around their intimacy issues, a lot around their challenges with like peeing their pants or having pain during sex or not desiring their partners, especially new mothers. And I was kind of thinking for myself, like, what is this that, like, I don't really teach this stuff, but everyone is just talking to me about this. It's like I'm holding some really special place for women to feel safe, that they can go in and they won't be judged or shamed or ridiculed. They'll be heard and they will have that container for, processing their story. And pretty much in that space, I basically came across one of my most influential teachers in the biomechanics space, in the yoga space, in the body healing space, which is Jill Miller, the founder of Yoga Tune-Up. And I have studied with her extensively for space of 8 years, but I really got to know the body from inside out, and what became incredibly good at fixing people's pain. So if someone is going through chronic pain issues, I will literally became that go-to to fix their pain. And it always boiled down to rewiring their nervous system. Nothing to do with what's happening actually at the tissue level. It always boiled down about reframing the narrative that is actually living and breathing reality in their nervous system. Mm-hmm. And that nervous system piece was really my opening into sexuality. It was really my opening into all the wisdom and all the treasures and all the magic that lives inside of woman's body, that is present in her being from the belly button down. And that not only is, so related to how she loves her body or does not love her body, what she experiences in bedroom or what she does not experience in her bedroom. But if we think about it from like a biological point of view, what happens in the pelvis is 100% relating to literally the future of our species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of points in there that I just want to highlight for people, because I see certain patterns, right, in people's journeys as they go, and how the journey from not knowing what you're supposed to be doing, maybe having an incident like you did that was very defined and clear, all the way towards doing the work there now. So the first one is that people just started talking to you about these things, right? So this isn't something that you consciously were trying to do with people. It's more like, oh, well, people are naturally doing this thing with me. I seem to be good at it. I seem to be providing value in this way. And then you followed that whole pathway. And then the second is that you found a mentor. You didn't just sit there and say, oh, I'm going to figure this all out myself. But you really found somebody to connect with that you felt in alignment with their energy, with the work they were doing, and said, you know what? I need to learn what they're doing so that I can get myself to the next level. So you were open, coachable, ready to take in new knowledge. And that's really important, especially as adults. I think a lot of us, when we get out of school, we have this feeling that we're done, right? We're done with education. Like, okay, now we're going to do whatever it is we're going to do. And really when we're on our own individual journey and committed to showing up as the best version of ourselves, like you are, we usually need to keep going. Like self-development doesn't stop, right? Finding mentors doesn't stop. And, if you can't find somebody in your vicinity to actually work with one-on-one, that's why we have books and courses. Like there are ways to get that information and get in alignment with, I'll call it the vibration of whatever you're trying to create. So I just want to highlight those points in your journey because I think they're really important for our listeners in terms of trying to figure out their own path. How can they start figuring it out themselves?
Yeah.
All right. So I
absolutely agree. And it's so interesting that you are really highlighting that. I was just having conversation today with someone about, that defining reality between, let's say, you have two people that are suffering and they really don't know what to do or how to help themselves. And you have one that is suffering, but has, we can call it a victim consciousness, or in a simple language, a fixed mindset. It's like, this is where I am. I cannot do anything about it. No one can understand me. No one can help me.
Mm-hmm.
And the second person can be going through exactly same experience. But if he only or she only has an open mindset that is like, I don't know what to do, I'm struggling, but I'm gonna figure it out. I am going to do my research, ask questions, become vulnerable and say, hey folks, I'm suffering, I need help with this. She will find her way. The right books, the right mentors, the right courses, the right answers will literally show in her path, and her experience of her life or going through the challenge and through her day-to-day reality will be completely different. So this is where it starts, and this is where it begins. Open mindset really allows women to have completely different experiences in life, no matter what they are going through, no matter their challenges.
That's right. That's right. And, I think also the beauty of us having so many people on the planet right now, we talk about overpopulation, but there are so many of us, more than any time in human history, and we're so connected. So to think that you're dealing with any kind of problem that other people aren't dealing with as well, and that other people haven't already figured out, it's, I think, a little delusional. Like, we're not that special in that sense. Our problems are not just uniquely ours. People are suffering through and having the same challenges as we are. And there are also people who have already overcome it that we can learn from. So,
Absolutely.
take it as a point of hope, but I always teach people how special they are, which is true. You are unique, but your challenges aren't unique, if that makes sense. We tend to have the same kinds of challenges as humans. All right, great. So I want to follow up with that point you made at the end about how what's going on in your body, in your pelvis affects and really, I don't want to take words out of your mouth. So could you explore that a little bit and what you meant by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I told you, I studied the body from inside out. I have done through process of really understanding the body. I've done several cadaver dissection labs, but I literally looked under the hood, and with my own hands, I had a scalpel and I went layer by layer by layer. So I not only, let's say work with the womb and ovaries and vagina, I felt it in my own hand. I, study its texture and its delicacy and its beauty in the physical way. So when we think about the pelvis as it sort of like relates or to whole body, there is no special part of the body in human in female physiology than the pelvis, because the pelvis is literally the seat of our sexuality. It is a seat of our procreation.
Mm-hmm.
It is the place where a new life is being conceived, where a new life enters the world, whether the delivery is vaginal or even in the case of C-section. It's also, the pelvis is the place that connects the breathing, our primary movement in the body, to walking. It's really that transition zone between breathing and walking. And it is the last place in the body from where we eliminate through our digestive tract what we no longer need. Furthermore, the pelvis is the seat of the spine that creates, support for your entire nervous system, for your entire skeletal system. So pelvis is definitely, like, if you look at it through these lenses, such an important and powerful and beautiful place for women to celebrate, to love, to nourish, to connect. But what is the reality of most women as it relates to her pelvis, as it relates to her body, as it relates to her sexuality? 99.9% women in this world are carrying some form of trauma, are carrying some form of guilt or shame or fear or judgment, unworthiness, not good enoughness, as it relates to their sexuality. And because sex and human experience of sex is such a taboo, we don't talk about it when we go for lunch with friends or when we are chatting over, you know, a novel in a book club. That's not a topic. So many women are suffering in silence. So many women think, as we were speaking earlier, like I am the only one who has this set of challenges. And I would not say it's necessarily their fault. It's really the reality that we don't have the space in our society where we can have open, loving, honest conversations about our experience as humans living in this body, and what does it take to have meaningful and really a beautiful relationship to our body, ourselves, and our sexuality.
Mm-hmm. I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about what are some of the common themes that you're seeing in your work with women. You know, what are the challenges that we are facing? And then how you help them turn that around and give me a picture of the transformation, because I'm really interested. So what are the challenges they're coming to you with? And then how do you help them turn that around? And then what does their life look like?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with a story. And that is a story of one of my clients. Her name is Lisa. And Lisa is very happily married for the last 10 years. She loves her husband very, very much. Her husband loves her very much. They have profoundly intimate relationship. But in 10 years of marriage, they never had intercourse.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in spite of them making, you know, love, them cuddling and fondling and have, you know, different form of sexual experiences outside of intercourse, in spite of the fact that they have very deep and intimate conversations about everything in their lives, they kind of created a silent agreement between one another that Lisa does not want to have intercourse with her husband, and they're not going to talk about it. They're going to live like that. So kind of 5 years into that silent agreement, they stop having all and every type of sexual experience because the impact of shame and, you know, silent suffering and not good enoughness and kind of that isolation this creates on an individual level really had a huge impact on how they started to relate to one another. And, you know, Lisa knew for a long time that there is something happening that should not be happening.
Right.
And it was not until they decided they wanted to have a baby that Lisa actually began to look for help.
Mm-hmm.
And when, like literally in the first session, when she started to, you know, share her experience and her story with me, I told her that her story is not unique. There are a lot of women who might be suffering with things like vulvodynia, which is a chronic tension in the vulva that can feel like a lot of itching and burning or like chronic yeast infection.
Mm-hmm.
And women with vaginismus, which she has, which is a chronic closing of the opening of vagina that makes any insertion, be it, you know, gynecological exam or insertion of tampon or your partner's penis, either extremely painful or downright impossible. And that was her experience, a downright impossible. And the real challenge here is that medical community has no idea what to do for these women. They have absolutely no clue. In fact, vast majority of women who have these tension conditions that I have seen over and over again mainly stem from unhealed and unprocessed sexual trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What they are prescribed are antidepressants.
Really?
Yes. Women who have vulvodynia and vaginismus are mainly prescribed antidepressants.
And what's the logic in the medical community for that? Why do
sexual drive. suppress your sexual drive, why you as a woman should have a right to a sexual fulfillment. And, you know, we can go like a step above about this entire container in our society that we live in that is shredding us into pieces, and how patriarchy has, you know, not only impacted our sexuality, how it has deeply, deeply wounded our sexuality. But yes, women who suffer with pain during sex are given antidepressants. It is absolutely shocking.
So, what you're saying is that when women come to doctors and they have these problems, they're giving antidepressants and they're basically told, well, shut off your sexuality. You know, if you're having a problem with it, just shut it off. Whereas if you look at what we do for men, what do we give them? Viagra, right? We put all of this money into, oh, there's a problem with your sexuality. Well, we better fix it. Like it's not in your head. It's not whatever. It's all these things. So I just wanted to highlight the difference in how doctors will respond to a sexual problem or challenge in a woman versus a man.
Without a question. Yeah.
Okay, so she comes to you with this problem, and then how do you handle it?
Okay, so when there is a sexual trauma in the body, it's not as simple and, you know, straightforward as changing woman's biochemistry and integrating the trauma in her system. So her kind of a primer essence, like original essence that her body and her sexuality was born with, can literally come back to surface. Now, I am a huge believer that when it comes to healing and when it comes to transformation, it's not about, especially when it comes to healing sexual trauma, it's not about like, you know, adding something fancy and sexy and attractive on top. Instead, it's like a big onion that at the core, at the center, is beautiful, is vibrant, is rich, is expressive. But the layers around that center, the layers of trauma, the layers of unprocessed grief, the layers of socialization, the layers of, you know, wounding from the childhood, are creating like these not so fruitful, sometimes damaged, sometimes even rotten layers of onion. But if we remove these layers with love, with acceptance, with presence, with embodiment, we can allow women to like really tap into that rich resourcefulness, this rich presence that's living inside of them, and their experience of sexuality will not only forever be changed, but they will literally get to know, in that process, they will get to know themselves from inside out. Mm-hmm. So on a practical level, what that looks like, one of the big pieces of my work and big pieces of, you know, helping women reclaim her sexuality is the concept that's very little known in both trauma world and personal development world, is the concept of sexual healing. Now, sexual healing, for some people, it sounds a little bit unsexy because, like, sex is supposed to be just about pleasure and erection, like multiple orgasms, and like having an incredible time together. But same as, you know, every day has a night, and yin has a yang, and winter has a summer, and summer has a winter. Same, sexual pleasure, in order to be fully felt and experienced, has to simultaneously go through the opposite, has to experience the opposite, which is the sexual healing. So sexual healing is a process that allows women in the most connected, embodied, loving, and accepting way actually release trauma patterns, release the impact of religious shame and guilt and fear and socialization conditioning from all parts of her sexuality, from her vagina, from her cervix, from her pelvic floor, from her clitoris, from her womb, from her ovaries, and replenish these essential part of herself with love, with beauty, and with acceptance.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's I'm just thinking of all the implications of that, really. So when you're talking about the healing work that you do, that it's being embodied, this is not talk therapy that you're doing necessarily. Of course, that's a component of it. But could you talk, because when you and I had a conversation prior to, hitting record, I remember you were saying how so much of this is embodied and you heal trauma through the body, not through talking about it, not through intellectualizing it, but in the body itself. And I think this has very far-reaching implications for a lot of things. So could you talk a little bit about the actual body work that you do?
Sure, absolutely. So just to put a little bit of perspective into that, no matter how long woman is in therapy or counseling for her sexual trauma, her therapist can never sit in her vagina.
Right.
She can integrate the story of it. She can integrate the emotions, the grief, the sadness, the anger and rage, but she cannot heal and integrate actually a parts of herself that are holding onto the experience of abuse or trauma or whatever she experienced. So this actually takes us into what's called the three-part brain system, which is the cortex, the limbic, and the primal brain. Now, the primal brain is basically the unconscious mind. And here is a very powerful thing that I would really love every listener to have as a major takeaway from this interview, which is trauma does not live in the cortex. Trauma does not live in the conscious mind. Trauma does not even live in the limbic system. Trauma does not live on the emotional level. Trauma actually lives in the unconscious. And here is the thing. The language of the unconscious, or the portal into the unconscious, is actually the body. The body itself, and doing body work is what truly allows women to fully release and integrate trauma in a very compelling way. So one of a hugely empowering piece in sexual healing is Jade Act, or working with a Jade Act, having a regular Jade Act practice. Have you ever heard about Jade Act?
I have, but if you could explain it a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of people who are listening haven't.
Totally. So Jade Act is actually, let me get one here. Shall I?
Yeah.
I think women are always curious, like, what the hell is that? So Jade Act is actually a 5,000-year-old practice that has been practiced by Taoist and Chinese concubines to maintain and enhance their sexual vitality. And the good thing about Jade Act practice is that it's becoming very mainstream, very, very mainstream. And I have a kind of a feeling, a personal feeling, that in 15, 20 years, Jade Act practice will become as big as yoga. Like literally every woman will be having Jade Act and doing regular Jade Act practice, having a regular Jade Act practice. So this is it. It's like really cool, green, super durable, excellent quality stone. And what woman can do with it is place it inside of her vagina and then do some very specific exercises that will help her sensitize her vaginal canal. They will obviously, on a biological level, they'll bring a lot of circulation, sensitivity, awareness, mind-body mapping of her vagina, of her cervix, of her pelvic floor. And through very deep breath work and, kind of a basic things from the trauma recovery world, like shaking, like working with a body's sensations and sounding and breathing body sensations, she will have a portal to discharging trauma from her system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things, and I was just literally having conversation this afternoon with someone who told me, like, I am totally sexually shut down. Like, I absolutely don't feel it. And I heard you talking about sexual trauma. And, you know, I never had an experience of sexual abuse, but something in me feels like I'm carrying on to something, but I can't put my sort of fingers or like connect in my mind about what is happening. And I shared with her, her name is Martina. I shared with Martina that this is actually a very common experience. So we have, you know, an individual trauma, knowing, yes, something has happened to me in the past, whether that has been incest or rape or harassment, any form of Me Too experience. But there is also a whole portal of a collective sexual trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think about things like slut shaming,
Mm-hmm.
slut shaming, where let's say a young girl, 11, 12 years old, she starts to wake up to her sexuality, she wants to play, you know, she makes up with the boy after the school, and, you know, she feels like, oh my goodness, this is so beautiful and special.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, she is drenching in shame, and she is drenching in an absolute terror, because the whole school is not only making joke on her behalf, but the whole school is, you know, shaming her and distancing herself from her and pointing fingers at her and, you know, like literally scrutinizing her experience. And slut shaming, what it does, it literally creates a fear of death inside of our nervous system, because we are social animal beings. You know, back in the day, not belonging to our tribe literally meant a certain death.
Yeah.
And the primitive parts of our brains, that unconscious, where the trauma gets stored, registers this as death. So at a young age, what the experience or like the encoding her nervous system gets is like, for me to be sexually vibrant means a certain death, because I won't belong. And if this, you know, if this messaging, this encoding does not get to work with, later on, she gets into her 30s, she gets into her 40s, she can feel like, I'm disgusted by sex. I don't want to have sex with my husband. I don't want to have sex with my partner. Sex hurts. Sex is painful. I can develop vulvodynia. I can develop vaginismus. I can have challenges with orgasms, because guess what? Being sexual is not okay. So whether woman had experience of individual trauma or collective trauma, and let's be honest, we all carry collective trauma. Everyone's sexuality is ashamed, is repressed, is unholy. This whole fucking concept, excuse my language, that we are born with original sin because we enter this world through mother's vaginal canal, is destroying our psychology, is destroying our identity into pieces. And guess what, Rose? People are suffering in silence. People don't know where to look. People don't have solutions. People don't have the tangible practices, the spaces, the communities, the containers where they can reclaim what is theirs and what is so human. And it is my mission to change it. It is my mission to really take women from this space of darkness and pain and suffering and help them reclaim their sexual freedom, because their life, their identity, their literally experience as a human 100% depends on that.
Wow. Thank you. When I talk about having a mission, everyone listening, when I talk about having a mission, that's it. Right there, you just saw it. The righteous indignation, the anger, the frustration that this has to change, that is what I'm talking about. When we talk about finding your mission and finding that one thing that is so endeared to your heart, to your soul, that you know this is your work, that is what it looks like. So Dagmar, first, Thank you. I mean, even aside from the mission itself, thank you for being so passionately expressive, because yeah, we don't see that a lot. And maybe that's part of you owning yourself, right? We don't see that level of passion in our society, not for real things. It's not for things that matter. So I just want to commend you for that, because you just displayed it beautifully for us. That's exactly it. We have to reclaim this part of ourselves. And when you talk about societal trauma, right? Collective trauma. Yeah, we all have it. Even if you weren't the one slut shamed, right? Even if you were her best friend, or if you were a friend, or you just saw it, or you saw the way now that the boys at the time, because they're not men yet, but the boys at the time reacted to that. How did they turn around and treat that person, whether it was you or somebody else being slut shamed? And how does that then translate to everything we're seeing in this Me Too movement, which I really want to transition to, because I know you've been able to fine tune it in such a powerful way with this, and the Me Too movement, that's what it is. It's finally women, it's like a domino effect. Finally women going, oh yeah, no, I feel that way too. At all levels, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be some kind of violent, gang rape, but at all levels. Maybe it was, you were that one person in school, being opening up to sexuality in the most beautiful, positive way, and then having all of this shit just dumped on top of it. And that does, it affects your whole life. Every time somebody says you're a slut, you're a whore, I remember we even read The Scarlet Letter in high school. you know you know why why are we reading that book? Why are we continuing on that trauma? Because it's not like we're reading that as a case history, as like, oh, look what used to happen. No, we're reading it, we're like, okay, we might not walk around anymore with a scarlet letter if you know the book, but we do in our bodies, as you're saying, we do in our souls. We continue on feeling this shame, and because the culture is such, it does allow people to shame you openly. Like, it allows for that. It's okay for people to call each other sluts. It's okay for that kind of messaging and ethos to be surrounding us. So why don't you go into really the work you're doing now with the Me Too movement, and how your passion for embodying and reclaiming the power of our sexuality has translated into specifically the programs you've put together.
Yeah. So when, Me Too kind of hits the 6th to 8th week of its global movement, I really felt very strongly like how huge service this is to us as women, and but also to so many men, and how it allow us to vocalize our trauma and our pain and our experience and our suffering, and also how it created a window for so many women to actually understand that they had sexual abuse in the first place. And as I was really feeling into that, I was also starting to see there is this critical missing gap between, okay, I have come forward with my story, and I understand and acknowledge that there has been disservice, there has been horrible pain and horrible abuse, or maybe small abuse, but it's still an abuse, and I still have a painful story that's being carried in my body, and the actual place where women can do something about it. So in my work at present, what I'm really serving is creating the bridge between either communicating your story publicly or acknowledging that you have Me Too living in your tissues, and then actually transitioning into a place of sexual healing and sexual reclamation. And what I have come to see over and over again is that even though we are, doing the work and the healing and the integration in the space of the body, in the space of sexuality, I have seen that when woman reclaims her sexual self, it literally creates a ripple effect on every single area of her life. I call it an ecosystem of woman's life. And what happens when woman restores her sexuality, reclaims her sexuality, accepts her sexuality, heals her sexuality, she usually becomes a leader, either a leader in her space, like her family, as a mother, as a partner, as a sister, as co-worker, and more often than not, powerful voice in her community or in the world. She usually gets promoted in her career, or she feels worthy enough of charging more if she's maybe a service-based entrepreneur. She comes into acceptance and love for her body. So she's really at that place where she can break through the prison of body dysmorphia and actually loves the skin that she lives in. And she begins to exude this incredible sense of radiance, incredible sense of magnetism. People love to be in her presence. People love to be in her company. If she's single and she's in dating, she will go out in the world of dating empowered, strong, feeling worthy. Her own cup is filled. And when she makes up with a man, it will come from a space of not, I need you, or you are my savior, but you know what? We are two humans and we can exchange, we can have beautiful experience together. If she's in relationship, she will be connecting to her partner, to her husband, in such an empowered, embodied, connected state. And I have seen relationships where there is a lot of suffering around, I'm not finding the right word right now, around codependency. Codependency is completely healed when woman actually heals her own sexuality.
Yeah. So as you can see, this is a much bigger deal than just, and not just, because it is a big deal when you heal yourself for yourself, but as you're saying, it's the ripple effect. It's who she shows up at in the world, in her family, in her career. You guys listening to this in particular, if you think about what does it take to be a leader, right? Well, this is part of it. This taking away of shame, all what tends to, in different forms, stop people from living their message, from going out there and having the confidence to do the work that they're meant to do in the world. So I just want you to acknowledge that when you start healing this part of yourself, especially as a woman, because we have so much trauma around it, and because the culture allows us and allows that to perpetuate, that makes a huge shift. And if you think about women in leadership positions, women as CEOs of companies, women in politics, we do naturally come at issues from a different kind of energy, a different kind of perspective. And right now, we need that balance. So not to get too far into it, but right now we need the balance of that feminine style energy to balance out the masculine that's been driving us, at least for the last 2,000 years, in terms of living sustainably, living in collaboration, nurturing, all of those things that tend to be of the feminine, not necessarily of women, because I like to make that distinction, but of the feminine energies, as we call them. So this is much bigger work than even just healing yourself. When you look at the Me Too movement, if all of those women were healed and received what they needed to heal, imagine the impact they could turn around to have in their lives, in their communities, in the world. So Dagmar, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of your work and your passion and really the impact of what you're doing with us. And I want to give you the opportunity to tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can work with you, if they're really interested in connecting on any level. What's the inroad for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most supportive container for women to kind of be in that they are in the place where I'm sort of hearing about sexual healing, and I sort of want to start doing something about it and actually proactively take care of my body and my sexuality, is my monthly membership program called Sexy Confidence, which basically gives women a very safe and effective step-by-step process that allows her to fully and completely heal and integrate her sexual trauma, unapologetically fall in love with her body, and reclaim sexual freedom. And we do it through process of embodiment practices, live training, and a group coaching experience where women can have a full eyes and hands-on support directly from me. And on top of that, and this is a really sort of very important thing to distinguish in Healing Me Too, is the space of collective sisterhood. And inside of Sexy Confidence, we are deeply invested in women having the space where other sisters, other women in the program are there to celebrate her, support her, love her, see her, accept her for exactly who she is. The healing itself happens both on an individual level, like we already spoken, sexual healing, getting into the body, feeling vagina, working with the JDAC, but also the thing that is less understood is the healing that needs to happen in sort of the container of a tribe. Once again, we are, social tribal beings. And for me to have, powerful healing experience and then go into community that is invested into my healing and have it reflected back that I am safe, I am loved, and I belong in my radiance and my healing and in my beauty, it's incredibly empowering for the nervous system. And this is what actually allows for transformation healing to really be sustained over long term. So the Sexy Confidence membership is really the aspect of group coaching, embodiment practices, and sisterhood that truly gives women the exquisite way into her body and transforming from the inside out and outside in.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. I know the program that you put together is unbelievable. So is there a website that they go to? How can they contact you?
Definitely. So the website is, let's put it on it. I don't have it in my head.
That's okay.
I don't have the link in my head, Rose.
That's okay. You know what?
I'm going to say that yes, let's include it in the show notes because this is
that's perfect.
This is hard for me. Remembering what's happening.
Okay, no problem. I'll put it in the show notes. Okay, so I'll let people know now. All right, great. So you know what? All of Dagmar's contact information will be right in the description here of the video. So you will just be able to click a link and head over there if you're interested in getting involved, being part of the community and healing your own trauma around sexuality. Whether that was, something that is personal to you, meaning you had your own individual trauma, or it is a community healing that you would like to get involved with. And, for me, I have a 12-year-old daughter, so she's just on the cusp of having to handle all of these issues, of coming into her own, of dealing with, kind of adult sexual issues for the first time. So it's very important to me to be part of this community and to learn, even if it's what not to do, right? Because I've grown up in this culture, so I would probably end up doing things that accidentally impact her negatively, especially in these coming teenage years. So for me, I'm looking at it as a parent, to get these trainings, to learn this language. What does that mean? So if not just for yourself, for your daughters, for your children, it's that important. So Dagmar, thank you so much for being here. I've loved our conversation. I've loved the power that you have shown up with. You've embodied to my community what it means to have a mission. You've shown us what it looks like to be that passionate and that on point. and to actually be doing something, not just talking about it, but to be creating something. So I want to thank you for that and for everything that you're doing. And I can't wait. I'm sure we'll connect again. So I can't wait to have you on maybe in a year from now and see where your community is, where it's grown, and have a follow-up. So thank you so much for being here on Inspired Rebel with us.
Thank you so much, Rose, for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Bye.